The Trump administration's Venezuela boat strikes have now killed over 80 people, and this amounting to one of the biggest political scandals of President Trump's second term. With this new reporting from the Washington Post on Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's reported kill everybody order, which resulted in a second follow-on strike on September 2nd, this is now receiving new scrutiny because these were survivors that were killed. These were two individuals who were clinging to the boat debris that were then killed in a subsequent strike. All right, this was done by Admiral Bradley. And now, even though blame's been shifting towards him and the White House is trying to obfuscate the reasoning here, what's clear is that people who were out of the fight, who were survivors clinging to life on this boat, were killed. And that is war crime territory, even though I want to make clear there is no real war here, which is why I think all of these strikes are problematic within themselves. This story has been rightfully dominating the news cycle for the last week. And depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you're receiving a vastly different perception of how this story is playing out. If you're on the left, you're receiving one set of information. If you're on the right, you're receiving another. And right now, the right is really misleading their audience. And I didn't just see this anecdotally and while watching Fox News. I used the tool to be able to get real accurate analysis of what the entire information landscape is portraying the story as. And I think you're going to be really interested to see my findings. So in order to try and quantify this discrepancy in coverage, I use this really great tool called Ground News. So it's a news site and an app that analyzes articles from 50,000 news sources daily. It tracks their bias, it compares their headlines, it showcases how each outlet is covering a given story, or if they're covering it at all, which you'll see in some cases here with this Hegseth story, they did not cover it at all. And it's an excellent tool. And, I've used it for years, basically, and I've recommended it to students in my media literacy and anti-disinformation guest lectures I've delivered. And it's really been an excellent media literacy tool and just a good news feed overall. And this video is actually part of a series of pieces I'm doing in partnership with Ground News. You might have seen my previous article with them as well. So if you subscribe with my link right here, ground.news/Ahmed, you will get 40% off your subscription to them. It's a great way to support my independent journalism. It would be only a $5 subscription with my discount per month. And it's an excellent tool. I really do use it. I highly recommend it. So it's the tool that's powered my findings here. So really appreciate it if you subscribe, but stick around this video because right now we're about to get into the meat of my findings of how right-wing media distorted the Hegseth story. So one of the most egregious examples of just outright ignoring a development in this story came from this AP story, right? Where it found that the Pentagon knew that there were survivors before that second double tap strike was ordered. So therefore, the Pentagon knew there were survivors and killed them anyway, right? So that was a news story from the AP. And according to Ground News findings, 51 sources total covered this. And guess what? Only 3 of those sources leaned right. So only 7% of that 51 articles that covered this story or pieces overall actually were right-wing. So that shows a wide omission from right-wing media, according to the latest data as of today, as of making this video. That is really stunning. And that's just one of many examples of how the right-wing media not only is obfuscating, but in some cases, outright ignoring certain developments that are damning for the Trump administration. So to power these findings, I'm using Ground News' blind spot feature, which allows you to basically see who is covering what, right? So that's what's really driving this. Another example of right-wing media mostly ignoring a story is the family of a Colombian man who was killed in one of these strikes. Not this one in particular, not the September 2nd one, but a different strike. They've sued the US over this. So now we're starting to see lawsuits flying. This is a significant development. So there was 93 sources total, according to Ground News analysis, that covered this from the left, the center, and the right. And guess how many of those were from the right? Only 9. Only 9 of those 93. So that's about 15% covered this, as you can see, right? We can look at the analysis here. You can see the bias breakdown, the comparison, and who covered this. So again, another major development showing the illegality of these strikes being highlighted and the stories being omitted or ignored by right-wing media. If you're on the right now on this Hegseth story trying to get up-to-date news, you're not getting the full story. Another egregious example of this is, of course, as you may have seen, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth sent out a Franklin the Turtle meme, or I don't know, an AI image he made of Franklin the Turtle basically shooting a bazooka at boats, right? And this was disgusting. It was childish. It got pushed back from the owners of Franklin the Turtle books, and it really received wide-scale backlash. And as you can see here, it only garnered about 15% coverage from the right. It was mostly covered by center and left-leaning outlets. Again, a really embarrassing moment highlighting Pete Hegseth's unqualification, his incompetence, his unserious nature, omitted by right-wing media. Another example of protecting this administration. When you omit a story that's negative, that is a form of propaganda. And it's not just these Venezuela boat strikes that's plaguing Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. There's the Signalgate report, right? His use of that private signal chat to coordinate military action, which was really indefensible. There's this new report, right? And the headline here is that this report contradicted claims from Hegseth that he was totally exonerated. And if you look at the data, as you can see here, of the total sources, 47 total sources that covered it, only 5 leaned right. That's only 13% of the sources that lean right. And if you look at the breakdown, the far right doesn't cover it. I don't see Fox News here. You can see CNN covered it, Washington Post, others. But again, like, it's very clear that there's an omission going on here. If you are a right-leaning news consumer in your own algorithmic reality, you're not going to get some of these key details, these key negative stories about the Trump administration. And that's just clear as day when looking at the data. This is technology that's analyzing, like I said, 50,000 pieces of content daily, 50,000 news organizations, actually, and really analyzing the content they're outputting. So this is real. This is legit. And we can get even more granular, right? You check out this headline from The Blaze. Right here, just outright saying that turns out that Hegseth kill them all line was another media invention. Just a complete distortion, right? Like, that wasn't a media invention. It was reported by someone. And we're going to get to the truth eventually. Admiral Bradley's trying to claim it didn't happen, but they pushed him out in front of Congress, right? We don't know exactly what's happening, but you can't definitively say it was a media invention. You know, that's how someone on The Blaze is covering it. But then if you look over here, you see the New Republic, someone from the left. They're saying Pete Hegseth crossed a clear, bright line. Will he pay a price? So you see how the left is covering it, looking for potential accountability, right, on something. And then meanwhile, the right, on The Blaze, they're covering it in a way as if there's nothing to hold Hegseth accountable for, before we even have all the facts. So you see how these different realities are presented. And I think it's really a key indicator of how our info ecosystems divide us even further, right? Especially if you're on the right, you're going to get just biased, distorted, frankly, disinformation-filled information. So in order really to get all this bird's eye view of the information ecosystem, I'm subscribed to Ground News Vantage Plan, which includes that blind spot feature I was using to research this piece. And it's been really invaluable in helping me to understand this media landscape and quantify how the biggest developments are covered, right? And if you subscribe with my link at ground.news/Ahmed, you'll get 40% off the same plan that I use. And again, if you're just a regular casual news consumer, it's really helpful to you too, because you can spot what you're potentially missing in the coverage as well. It's a really great tool. So as you can see, right, that there's really key omissions happening here. And if you're on the right, you're not getting the full picture. And this is not fair to their readers. And I think it's important to expose. So I'm gonna keep doing this series, keep documenting how the media is covering it, because it can give you a real sense of what the right thinks is damaging, right? When you look at this analysis, you can see what they're ignoring. If they're ignoring the story, chances are they think that their audience wouldn't benefit from seeing it. Thanks for watching. And like I mentioned earlier, this video is a series in a partnership with Ground News. And like me, Ground News is supported by subscription. So if you use my link at ground.news/Ahmed, you'll get 40% off your subscription, which is really only $5 a month. And you can use it as a casual news site and get a bird's eye view of exactly how the biggest stories in politics are being covered. Or, like I use it as an investigative tool to catch disinformation campaigns in real time. And it also tells you who funds each media organization, so you can make an informed decision about which companies you're supporting, right? Because this is the partnership, if you subscribe to Ground News, you're also supporting my independent journalism, which I know all of you watching and all of you have been subscribing support. So I really appreciate you guys. And I would not be recommending Ground News if it was not the real deal. I really couldn't recommend them more. And it's been great partnering with them on this series because it provides real journalistic value to really figure out where the media landscape is at on each of these really rapidly changing news developments. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you watching, and stay tuned. I think I got another one coming in the next few weeks. We're going to be doing this. So appreciate you. Leave comments, like, share. See you next time.